Brace the rudders! Raise the sails! Raise the sails!
Captain, an unidentified ship is approaching. Over.
Roger. Wait, is that an Enterprise sales solution?
Reach sales professionals, not professional sailors. With LinkedIn ads, you can target the right people by industry, job title, and more. Start converting your B2B audience today. Spend $250 on your first campaign and get a free $250 credit for the next one. Get started today at linkedin.com/campaign. Terms and conditions apply.
The world moves fast. Your workday, even faster. Pitching products, drafting reports, analyzing data. Microsoft 365 Copilot is your AI assistant for work. Built into Word, Excel, PowerPoint, and other Microsoft 365 apps you use. Helping you quickly write, analyze, create, and summarize. So you can cut through clutter and clear a path to your best work. Learn more at Microsoft.com/M365 Copilot.
Start your day with Quaker Protein Instant Oatmeal. The Instant Oatmeal ready to help you tackle whatever your day brings. Like wrangling your toddler into their car seat. That was fun. Coaching your 6th graders soccer team. Go girls! And carrying all the groceries in one trip. Whew. Try Quaker Protein Instant Oatmeal, granola, and bars. Great taste and a good source of protein. Quaker, bring out the good.
Hello, Croeso. Welcome to a very, very special Ospreys Eyrie podcast. There's been a few difficult months for the Ospreys, but we as fans are absolutely delighted with some very, very good news we received yesterday. And we're absolutely delighted to have us with us this evening, Rob Stewart, the leader of Swansea Council. A very warm welcome to you, Rob. Are you well?
Yeah, doing good, guys. Good to see you both.
Great. And as I say, we're absolutely made up with a decision made at Cabinet yesterday to go ahead and support the redevelopment of St Helens. And I guess, Rob, can you just give us a little bit of background to this point, to tell us perhaps a little bit more about the decision that was made by Cabinet yesterday and what you feel will happen next? So the floor is yours, Rob.
Oh, thank you, guys. Well, yeah, I mean, as you know, we've been for some time now trying to find a way to support the Ospreys moving back to St Helens. The original decision that Cabinet made a while ago now was to essentially provide a loan to the Ospreys for them to be able to invest in St Helens. And that loan was dependent, because obviously it's potentially public money, was dependent on the Ospreys being able to secure a license from the WRU and for, or a PRA2 arrangement being in place. So that was the basis, and that money sat there waiting to be released on the basis that we were waiting for the WRU. And of course, since then, things have dragged out and taken several different turns. And obviously this week, the WRU again have extended the period of discussions with Y11 in terms of the discussions around Cardiff and the club there. So what we were looking to do was to continue to see how we could unlock some of that. And what we've discussed and agreed with the Ospreys is almost a joint investment in St Helens. So the way that breaks down is obviously the council owns St Helens. So it's perfectly reasonable for us, as we do in lots of grounds and sporting facilities and assets across the city and county of Swansea, we can invest directly in that asset. And we have to have a rationale for doing it, obviously. And the biggest rationale for us is first and foremost the fact that it can be a broad community facility, because whilst the Ospreys will benefit for and be able to use it for match days and for runouts, etc., then the rest of the time it's available for other teams, other community bodies to use. And so there's a legitimate reason for us to invest in that. And the really good news is, alongside that, the Ospreys have confirmed that they're prepared to invest a sum of money alongside it to create the things that they need to be able to move back there for the forthcoming season, and to satisfy the requirements of the URC to be able to play professional rugby there. So in that respect, it's a win-win-win. We get the benefit of a community facility, which will remain whatever the outcome of any discussions. But also the Ospreys get the ability to move forward and return to St Helens, which of course is better financially for them, because we know things are more challenging while they're up in Bridgend, and hopefully the crowds will return in great numbers when they come back to St Helens. But also it provides the Ospreys with a better position in terms of any competition or any process that the WRU run in terms of licenses then. So it places them in an even stronger position. We think, as you've heard me say many times, think the Ospreys have got a really strong case anyway for a license, whether it's within the 4 or a 3, and we'll see how that plays out with the WRU. But this, obviously, having a home, having St Helens being invested in and being upgraded, adds to that. So for all of those reasons, I think it's absolutely the right thing to do, and it was unanimously voted through at Cabinet.
Well, I've got a question, Rob. Are you able to tell us a little bit more about what the funding package from the council allow us to do? Because I remember we put together a podcast based on the original pre-planning process, where there was going to be sort of like a roof on the terrace there, and all that. But I guess that falls in now into the remit of the Ospreys commitment. But I'm particularly interested in about the pitch, because obviously that's going to be our community asset for the future. Is how quickly is that likely to happen? And within the original plan, obviously there was a little bit of an idea to reconfigure the pitch.
Yep.
So do we know any more about what that might look like when we come to hopefully play there in September, October next year?
Yeah, so absolutely. So there are a number of considerations with this. So the investment in the pitch will come directly from the council. Where you place that pitch, obviously there are several options. You could replace it like for like where it is now, or you could move it closer or reorient it. I think the proposal is to continue and reorient it in terms of what would prepare it best for the future. With the Ospreys then able to put things like the stands and other stuff around that to start to create that new stadium. We have considerations, obviously, because we've got a live request for the cricket, because they're obviously moving to Sketty Lane, where we're investing about £1.2 million in new cricket facilities. But given the exceptionally wet weather during the winter, the cricket wickets are taking a longer time to bed in, and obviously some of the works were delayed there. So for all of those reasons, we're trying to see if there is a potential to do the works at the same time allowing cricket to play some of their games at the beginning of the season. So those discussions are ongoing at the present time. But yes, so I mean, it is the previous proposal in terms of the elements. It is phased slightly differently in terms of how you get to that final stadium arrangement that the Ospreys will need for the URC. And obviously it's important that they have something that works commercially as well for them. So yeah, I mean, it delivers, I think, everything that both parties need, and it gives us the assurance that the elements that we're investing in are ones that are there for the broader community. So that meets the needs that we would require.
From a supporter's point of view, it's fantastic news. We're hearing that there is an imminent announcement. I'm slightly concerned it was going to be watered down in terms of we get the place fit to play in, and that'll be it. But seeing the pitch, the lighting, everything being done that effectively that takes us to almost like the original option B, which was not quite the full brand new standard the Ospreys want to build. And I suppose if we get a long-term commitment and assurances from the WRU, we can go that far. But to see this level of commitment from the council is absolutely superb. There's loads of Osprey supporters massively excited about getting into St Helens. There are people with the deposit still, who want a season ticket in St Helens. There's a lot of other people I talk to in the living around Swansea local saying, if it's down to St Helens, I'm definitely going to pop down for the odd game as well. So I think in terms of crowds, it's a massive step forward in terms of what it offers for the Ospreys. It's brilliant news.
Yeah, and hopefully, as I said, it's a win-win-win. We get the win of the community benefit. We get the enhanced stadium that the the fans can enjoy and support the Ospreys back in St Helens, and then hopefully puts them in that stronger position to be able to enter into the process that the WRU obviously intend to run. And obviously that will depend on how the EGM plays out, I guess, in a few weeks' time.
Because I guess having professional rugby back in Swansea has an economic benefit as well, Rob.
Oh, massive. Again, we've had independent verification. There's been work done by the universities, there's work done by professional consultancies who look at the economics of what this provides, and it's at least £15 million a year to the local economy from the Ospreys being based and operating and playing in Swansea.
Just regards to installation of I think we said it's going to be a 4G pitch, which I suppose is yeah. Obviously you've installed them in secondary schools for the comps in the area. What sort of time scale does that process take?
So on the current timeline, as I understand it, works would need to begin probably in the next 4 or 5 weeks. And then they would complete probably before the end of September. And again, the Ospreys, in terms of their phasing plan, would obviously see them on site probably early May, and then completing in September, so that they can play the first couple of games of the new season away, and then start to use St Helens then from October.
Which for us as fans is what happened this year.
Yeah,
we had the first 2 games in South Africa, so that seems to have worked out. I've got another question, but I'll let Grant go ahead. Grant, you got a question?
No, carry on. Well, going back to, you said, there's a pending EGM, isn't there? It's massively important as far as I'm concerned, in terms of Welsh rugby full stop, not just the future of the Ospreys, but what impact do you see that EGM having around in Swansea?
So, in terms of the EGM, again, I don't profess to be an expert in terms of the arrangements within the rugby setup and the clusters and all that. But, my simple understanding is it's 50% of the people who turn up will decide whether or not the motion is accepted. So it's a simple majority. I think, if the vote is successful and the chair does get removed, then I can't see how the WRU can then continue with their plan, because that would be a clear vote against the current proposals. Whether that then leads to other people leaving or standing down, we don't know. They've already made some statements about what might happen if they lose. We'll see. But I think one of the things that's frustrating is there's clearly the signal that they had, where a quarter of the national stadium was empty for a Six Nations game, which is absolutely unheard of. We know that the WRU then pushed out loads and loads of cheap tickets to try and make sure that the subsequent games have fuller stadiums. But that in itself is a message from the fans, isn't it, and the public, to say we don't support what you're doing. So I've asked and I've urged a number of times that they need to reconnect with the fans. They need to step back, think again, start again, and come forward with an idea that people can actually buy into. And not just for the Ospreys, and I'm on record, and I will continue to tell anybody who listens, they are the one true region. They are the ones who provide so much of what we need in terms of talent and support for national success. I can't see how the WRU can ignore that in their plans, and we need them to think again. I'm a firm believer that if they look again at the Irish model, there is an opportunity. There's enough money in the game to be able to continue with 4 regional sides. I certainly think if they spent the money that they have differently, that they can make the inroads they want to make. And I think, for Wales as a national team, if we were to go to 2, which was obviously the original suggestion, that would have left too small a group of elite players, I think, for us to choose from and be successful. I've never believed you shrink to succeed. I don't think it's the right way to do stuff. And I think, 4 is a sustainable amount if they spend the resources they have and invest the resources in the right way. They have more money than the Irish Rugby Football Union at their disposal. They have more revenues than them. Do they use them wisely? I think that's a question. I think there's, we've got Rob Regan and the guys obviously talking about alternative plans, and there's a really solid basis to some of those proposals. So I just don't know. On all levels, it just seems really odd that the WRU are pushing so hard at this when all of the evidence seems to stack up differently.
Yeah, sorry, and I guess from your point of view, but we all know you can split a cake in a number of different ways, and I harped on about this quite a lot. Do you feel that the relationship with the WRU is repairable? Obviously you had that difficult meeting with them. Was it January? Is that something that we couldn't be done? And I guess to a certain degree to the upper echelons of the Ospreys as well, because it sounds as if that was quite a difficult meeting. But have things moved on?
Well, look, none of this has ever been personal. No. This is about professional standards and about us doing what we should do, which is to stand up for the people who live in our community and the team that plays in our region. So none of it's personal. I think, in terms of the relationships, we have a good relationship with the Ospreys, and I hope that continues. You're right that the meeting was difficult, but it was supposed to be a robust discussion, because as soon as we, heard what, the chief executive of the WRU had to say and the chief executive of the Ospreys had to say, then clearly we could not, ignore what we were being told. And you'll know since then that, we in the meeting again, just to say, we had statutory officers, as we call them, in the council. So these are people who are professional legal officer, professional, the chief executive, and a number of senior officers in there. They were all sat there with their computers and their pads taking notes through the meeting. At the beginning of the meeting, there was no request for it to be a confidential meeting. And it was only when we got to a part of the discussion was there a request, which is, as you'll have seen, recorded in the minutes, for part of what the discussion was to be commercially confidential. So, as a public body, we have obligations in terms of public interest. And we then proceeded to send those parties a copy of the minutes to say, look, this is what we've recorded. The chief executive of the Ospreys didn't respond to that and didn't want to comment on them. The chief executive of the WRU did, reviewed, amended the minutes and sent us an amended version back, which then became her view of what was in the meeting. And it's a bit bizarre, having then said to us, we want those minutes to remain confidential, that then we receive a freedom of information request, which we obviously have to respond to. And the nature of freedom of information means that response doesn't just go back to the individual who requested it. It then turns that into a public request. So it's a bizarre set of circumstances whereby, having asked for them to remain and wanting them to remain confidential, they then turn them into a public document. So, our position, and we do feel vindicated on this, our position has been consistent throughout, which is, we said this is what we were told. And then when the minutes have come out, they've demonstrated what we've said prior to that.
Yeah, you've never changed, you've never wavered in terms of what you said to me, Rob, because we've got separate conversations on that as well. But yeah, I think almost everybody in Welsh rugby is aligned. Okay, almost everyone. Unfortunately, there are a few people right at the top of the WRU aren't. You look at Swansea City Council, Neath Talbot Council have also said they support in what you're doing. The Senedd, MPs, the ex-players, you've got a lot of supporter groups, a lot of clubs, and a lot of the media. And the WRU still seem to be spinning the story of it's just a vocal minority, and I'd like to think this is anything but a vocal minority. Especially when you got people like Rob Regan coming in with what look like sensible plans for the way forward. And you can understand that they base these plans based on what they've learned. And I think there's so much information out there from all these parties, almost all saying the same thing, singing from the same hymn sheet. We don't want to shrink rugby in Wales. Yeah, you don't want to manage decline. That's not going to make the national team any better, which is the ultimate aim, isn't it?
Absolutely, absolutely. And no, I mean, look, there is always another option. There's always another way. And as you say, it does seem to, does appear to be a small number of entrenched people at the top of the WRU that are preventing alternatives being explored. I'm really interested, actually, because it's one of the things that we were promised that nobody's ever seen. What's the data from the process that they collected earlier? So if it does support their position, why not share that publicly? It's never been shared. Really keen to see that.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, there's a lot of opinion, especially the Ospreys Supporters Club have said very clearly to Abbey Turney that we feel as if the consultation process was flawed in terms of the surveys where people are allowed to feedback. It was always predetermined answers, and the questions were phrased in a way with multiple options, just pointing you in one direction all the time, to the point where we've had more people filling out petitions saying please support the EGM and stop what's going on than filled in the actual WRU survey.
Yeah.
Rob, just a very, very practical question. I know we've got a number of fans, and I'm sure all clubs have, who perhaps need enhanced facilities. Sort of maybe, and I know the original plans had facilities for disabled people to watch the game and park close to the game. I assume certainly the parking element would be still something you'd want to do for the community use in general.
Yeah, well, obviously nearby there is obviously the recreation, the car parking area, which is available to use. Obviously, we would hope that there would be sufficient bus routes to service that as well. And then in terms of facilities, obviously the Ospreys already have a plan which shows them creating new facilities there. And a fan zone, toilets, changing rooms, all of the things that they would want as part of that redeveloped stadium. And again, it's about that phasing of what goes in. So I'm assuming that certainly things like the disabled facilities and the viewing, etc., will all be in the initial first phase because they'd absolutely need to be there. So that will be part of what the Ospreys deliver as part of their elements of the ground. We're obviously looking at the pitch, the floodlights, some of the other bits, and some of the health and safety aspects of the ground to make sure it's a safe space. Hopefully it'll be a great fan experience there, and we'll see thousands of people turning up to support the Ospreys when they return.
Great. I've got no further questions. Grant, have you got anything you want to ask?
It's just, I would ask if you got any insight, because as soon as the announcement was made yesterday, as a representative of the Ospreys Supporters Club, I'm asking the Ospreys, saying, right, tell us about the stands, tell us about this, tell us about the fans. So, and it's like, Grant, this has only just been announced in the last couple of hours. Give us a little bit of time, okay? And as soon as we got information, we'll start filling in the gaps in terms of these are the plans, these where the stands are going, this is what you have, etc. So, yeah, I know you're not in a position to answer that, Rob, really. But if they've given you any suggestion what might go in initially, you're more than welcome to share with us. But we're waiting for the official announcements.
Yeah, well, I think there are some obvious things that would happen as part of the redevelopment. The existing stand that's there will need to be repositioned, so that's part of it. I know the Ospreys had previously looked at bringing in additional stands, which they can add in. Then there's if the pitch is near the terracing, the large terracing there, having covers on the terracing. So in that odd day when we get a bit of rain in Swansea, the fans
never had any rain
stay
in Swansea.
dry. So it's those sort of things that I think are pretty straightforward. And then it's about what can we do around, or what can the Ospreys and ourselves do around that in terms of the facilities, the access, to make sure it all works properly. And part of that, I think, is the fan zone. Obviously, the players changing, the referees changing facilities, and all that. So all of those things are within the Ospreys proposals.
Well, I just like to really, first of all, congratulate you, Rob, and your fellow councillors for supporting us. I think you've done a tremendous job, and you've obviously, keen to promote the Ospreys and obviously promote the city, which is because it's very important to the city. So, diolch yn fawr iawn. Thank you very much for coming on tonight, and let's hope in the future we look back at this as a key milestone, and it becomes, the first phase of a very exciting opportunity for the city, great opportunity for the Ospreys.
No problem at all. Look, I think we all want the same thing, don't we? We want the Ospreys to be secure long term in our city. We want to see the fans back at St Helens. We want to see St Helens a great rugby venue again, and hopefully all the success that will then come from that. So, we're going to continue on all fronts to try and make that happen.
Thanks, Rob. Brilliant.
Thank you very much, Rob.
No problem. Cheers, guys.